Some of the biggest brands in e-commerce are suffocating their spend for two key reasons. If you're an 8-figure operator, you're gonna wanna watch this. And there's this sort of constant topic on Twitter around the idea of that I think is really toxic to 8 and 9-figure brands. It's sort of this death spiral where you can't ever get yourself the signal to increase spend. That becomes a huge issue. I'm talking about some of the best brands in the world I'm watching do this over and over, but there is a solution. This is how you unsuffocate your business.
Today's episode of Sharpen Your Skills is brought to you by our partners at Flaw and Mercury, two incredible contributors to our ecosystem. This wouldn't be possible without them.
Some of the biggest brands in e-commerce are suffocating their ad spend for two key reasons. I'm Taylor Holiday, the CEO of Common Thread Collective, and we get to run growth for some of the biggest brands in DTC. And I see them all asserting a very common problem in 2025.
Sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, it is. And the problem with this issue is that it's a spiral. It comes out of a set of behavior that has actually served them really well to this point. So I'm gonna break this down for you, and it begins in two categories. The first one I call the Omnichannel problem, okay? And this usually is for brands that are beginning to expand their distribution. So in phase one of the D2C story, what I see is brands that are running primarily Meta as their growth engine, driving on conversion optimized, so we'll say conversion optimized on a click basis, ads to their website, okay? And this is the bulk of the demand creation and the demand capture. It all happens in one singular place. And so measurement is fairly simple. And they might see something like a ROAS of 2.0 on that acquisition. That's profitable, and they scale against that result. But inevitably, over time, as the business grows, they continue to run into the same places where all their ads are in Meta, but they've now made a choice. Instead of just being on the website, they've now decided to roll out broader distribution. And that distribution shows up in a place like Amazon first, usually. And in some cases, brands will take and they will make their merchandise duplicitous between their website and Amazon, okay? And this is where the first problem begins, is that they are still running this same funnel, conversion optimized, click, okay? But inevitably, Amazon, which if we just take a second and we go, all right, let's look at the e-commerce, all of the transactions in all of e-com, right? 50% of all e-commerce purchases are happening on Amazon, right? 50% are happening there. So inevitably, when you open up your own merchandise on Amazon, guess what happens?
It splits.
That's right. So you start to see some of this demand that you've created off of Meta gets satiated and realized on Amazon, okay? But what happens, and so the end result is these ad dollars flowing from Meta are still being measured exclusively on your website. And all of a sudden, they start to look a little less efficient. So that 2.0 becomes a 1.2, and the response to that is, uh-oh, that's not profitable, decrease my spend. And you can see how what appears as though Amazon is now this growing, thriving, more profitable channel. Web is starting to look less profitable, but there's a lack of recognition that the core growth engine is still happening in discovery and demand creation on Meta. And so what I see brands do is they fail to move the measurement system to incorporate the broader set of distribution, right? And the reality is, anytime that you have broader distribution, okay, Amazon, and then let's layer in even retail now, right? This problem just becomes more insidious, is that the clicks may go on a direct path, but some of the views end up here and here and here. And so what you end up with is as your distribution broadens, so does your demand capture. This is the primary statement that if you walk away with, I want you to remember that as your distribution broadens, so does your demand capture. And so you cannot expect the same level of efficiency to show up on all these channels as when you just had the website. So, and then this problem isn't just about broadening distribution in the sense of where the product is available for purchase. It also has to do with your advertising. So, generally the sequence is that I go from, let's say I have my Meta conversion, right? Now I move to something, the phrase people love is something more top of funnel, okay? Let's use TV as an example. And now, again, I have my website where they could purchase, okay? I've got Amazon where they could purchase. And I've got, we're sitting here in our Skull Candy office. Let's just use an example. of, let's say we've got Best Buy, we've got a retailer where I can purchase, right? And again, all my meta traffic, traditionally I still see people measuring it exclusively as if none of that additional demand is showing up here or here. And I get it, these are all still clicks and we want to measure that direct funnel and traffic. But what's true about TV? Can you click on TV, Mickey? No, you're kidding me, right? So what that means is that the path here is all over the place. It's not linear. It's all over the place. And in fact, most of the demand gets satiated in the largest point of distribution. And if we go back and we say, okay, Amazon is 50% of e-commerce, well, e-commerce is only 15% of retail. So most of the demand is going to begin to get satiated in the place where the distribution is larger. And if you don't figure out a way to begin to, this is the phrase we're going to come back to, like amortize your spend, and you continue to hold all of your ad dollars, what I see is that people will even do this with television, where they'll take the entire digital media budget and hold it accountable to the web performance. And the end result is I watch people just spend less and less and less because as they brought in distribution and they moved higher funnel, the appearance of the media efficiency on the web measurement itself looks worse. And these, I'm talking about some of the best brands in the world I'm watching do this over and over.
The train starts to run away.
That's right. So as you begin, so the problem is you pull back spend, and then guess what happens is demand begins to decrease everywhere. And it's sort of this death spiral where you can't ever get yourself the signal to increase spend. And it's a measurement problem. You're not including measurement of the impact on Amazon. You're not including measurement of the impact on retail, despite the fact that you gave the customer options to purchase there. And that becomes a huge issue. Okay, the second problem. So that's like problem one is omnichannel distribution isn't matched with omnichannel measurement. Okay. Step two though, and this is one that I have to admit that we are sort of complicit in the creation of this problem. Okay. This is about new customer obsession. A lot of brands early on, this measurement system made a lot of sense. When you are in the early days of a business, most of the goal of your paid media is to acquire new customers, right? And so you can assume that brands where there are not really any existing customers, all of the acquisition is going to go to driving new customer acquisition such that your AMER or new acquisition marketing efficiency rating, so new customer revenue over ad spend, is basically equal to what you see attributed in whatever platform you're using, whether that's Meta itself or if you're using a third-party tool. You can assume that your new customer revenue and your attributed revenue are pretty close to the same because you don't have any other customers. Right. And so early on, AMER is a highly effective measure of your advertising dollars. And you could basically take all of your ad spend divided by all of your new customer revenue and get a pretty good sense of your new customer acquisition efficiency and the efficiency of your ads dollars in total. But, okay, and this is really true for big brands. Let's imagine we fast forward 5 years, okay, and you've sold over the course of those 5 years maybe $100 million of merchandise and you have, I don't know, something like 500,000 customers, okay? So now you have gone out and you've acquired tons of existing customers in your database, right? And so now when you run a meta ad, okay, and this is especially true with ASC and the lack of identity resolution that exists, you're getting more and more of that spend that's now split between new and guess who?
Existing.
Exactly. So now a bunch of your same spend, and what happens is brands still using AMER, just like we saw over here with their efficiency when they're using just the website, their AMER begins to look worse because they're taking dollars that are being spent on both new and existing customers and they're applying it against AMER. And this is hard because it's not actually easy all the time to see how much money is being spent on new versus returning on a platform like Meta. And so what people do with this is they try everything they can to try and exclude existing customers, okay? This is the mistake. Brands do everything they can to try and remove their existing customers and continue to focus all of their ad dollars on the new customers. But here's what I want to tell you, okay? These 500,000 customers, okay, over the course of 5 years, the vast majority of them are what we would call lapsed. Let's just say something like 440,000 of them are lapsed. That means they have not purchased from you in 6 months to a year, they aren't engaging with your emails, and they don't belong to you. there's this incorrect assumption in e-commerce, the idea that because a customer bought from you once, they're therefore going to continue to purchase from you forever, and you should hard exclude them from all of your advertising. And for large brands, this is killing you. It is killing you. Instead, what needs to happen, in many cases, the next tranche of growth that's going to be most efficient is actually going to come from being able to go after and win back these customers. So winning back lapsed customers might be the most efficient tranche of incremental contribution that exists.
We know creative volume is everything, but let me show you a tool that we're using at Common Thread Collective to help our clients produce exponentially more ad creative. It's called Format. Format allows you to take the hundreds of ads that you've just developed using CTC's exciting new system and take what is the reality that right now, every one of these ads is probably driving to a single landing page. And so what that means is that, let's say you have 100 ads times one landing page is going to give you 100 funnels. But let's imagine we could do this in a better way. What if each individual ad was able to drive to not just its own individual landing, but what if you could create 4 variations? And maybe that this one needs its own bundle. Or maybe this one needs a price test between 2 different ads. What if this one needs to have one featuring older people and one featuring younger people? What if every ad you created was able to have its own perfectly designed message and funnel so that you could exponentially increase the amount of funnels? So instead of just one landing page, we went to hundreds, fast, easy, no code, no developer needed. That's what Format enables. Their tool allows you to quickly, lightning fast, build as many variations of your landing page, and not just landing pages, but full cart and checkout experiences instantaneously. They give you AI recommendations for ideation to go from just having 100 funnels to thousands of funnels instantaneously. Within minutes, you can be testing tons of different variations of their pages to produce the best results and exponentially increase your creative volume. That's the kind of math that Pierre de Format himself could get behind.
Would you say it's easier to win back an existing customer or a lapsed one than it is to go from the new one?
Yes, absolutely. That's sort of exactly the point, is that a customer that is familiar with you, who has bought the product before, has a motivation to purchase. Now, there is probably a cohort of those customers that had a negative experience that are probably more difficult to win back. But if I was given the choice between having to sell to a net new customer versus a customer who had bought from me before, it is going to be more efficient, more likely to go after the customer that you've already sold to once.
Yeah, they can also become advocates.
That's right. And so I think what's happening so often is we're excluding these people as if, because they bought from me 5 years ago, that is somehow an indication that they're going to engage with me in the channels that are free. So a lot of times the reason you're excluding people on Meta is because you want to sell to them through email or SMS. Right? But the problem is, if it's been a year, these people aren't buying from you. So you need to reintroduce them into your funnel. And you can do this, right? If we run a holdout, we can actually find the incremental value of both of these customers and be able to isolate it. So what happens though, the same thing that happens over here, which is that because AMER, or some brands will call this NC ROAS, right? This is like the triple whale term that gets used. They are so used to that being the signal of the efficacy of their ad dollars, and they're taking all of their ad dollars divided by, so they take NC Rev over all ad spend, right? And they're using that to define new customer ROAS, when the reality is that maybe 40% of that spend right now is going to existing customers. And so it's a system design problem. And also, we're not talking about the new customers coming from Amazon. So it's, again, the system of measurement complexity becomes a huge issue. And so these brands, one, what you start to see is that as brands get to this maturity level, when they're doing 50 plus million a year, let's say, what you see in most cases is that their revenue might look something like this. Every month, half of it's coming from new customers, half of it's coming from existing customers. But yet they'll take the ad dollars and they'll isolate them exclusively onto this cohort of customers. And this is leading to, again, the same problem, is that you're watching AMER is declining, which leads to ad spend declining, which actually decreases growth across new and returning. So growth for new and returning goes down. And again, it's this spiral of suffocation where, because the measurement constraint is too narrow relative to the present state of the business, the ad dollars are going backwards and the whole thing suffers. You need to think about your ad dollars as an engine for growth for all customer types and all distribution. And right now, the legacy system that got you here, new customer acquisition is the primary success. And there's this sort of constant topic on Twitter around the idea of rolling reach or net new customers or percent new visitors that I think is really toxic to large 8 and 9 figure brands, where in many cases, what we actually need to do is get back in front of the customers that we've lost. And there's hundreds of thousands of them that are not purchased from you, and yet they're being hard excluded from all of your best ads, or they're getting a very small fraction of the budget. Now, the hard part is like, okay, if we were to introduce that, well, how do we assess the efficiency of that acquisition? How do we set a target on a lapsed customer versus a returning customer versus a new customer? And that really brings, okay, Taylor, what's the solution to this problem? And the reality is it's complicated, but there is a solution. And it exists in something that I call incremental marginal return. Okay? IMR, that's right. IMR. Okay? This is the measurement system of the future for 8 and 9 figure brands that helps them to undo this suffocation system. And here's how it works. Okay? Step 1 is to understand the idea of incremental. Okay? This is a set of experiments at first the channel level and then the tactic level. So the channel being something like Meta, the tactic being new versus returning acquisition as an example, or ASC or some level of tactic that allows you to assess the incremental return across all distribution. Okay, this is really important. You have to hold out website and Amazon. So we have to have web plus Amazon for these channels. Now, if you have retail, that becomes a little harder. There's ways to do it still. The reason I'm more hesitant to even try to introduce retail is that it really needs to be its own buckets of spend, because the pace of cash realization on retail isn't the same as on web and Amazon. In other words, if I go sell an incremental unit at Target, I don't make myself more money today because that's a front ordered PO that leads to some sequence of future POs, but it's not the same. So the step 1 for this for brands is web and Amazon measurement of holdout for your channels. This is going to allow you to start to unlock more spend into your core channels like Meta. It's going to allow you to unlock channels like YouTube and other top of funnel video, where there's broader distribution or demand capture for video across those places. So that's step 1. If I can begin to understand the incremental impact of my ad dollars across web and Amazon for every channel, that's a huge step towards this process. Okay?
Is this similar at all to POAS? I've heard people mention that. Is it different?
Well, so what you're getting at now is the second part, which is that the other hard thing is that the margin profile on web and Amazon is different. Okay? But what you're getting at is now I have to understand the margin value of each sale. Okay? So this is going to force you to help everybody on your marketing team build systems for the underlying data to have the costs for each of these things and each unit included in the sale. So when I sell something for $1,000 on my website, there's a marginal value that that sale has that can be included against the marginal outcome. Okay? So that idea that we are now going to focus all of our systems onto a marginal return, not a revenue return. So the reason ROAS struggles is it's a return on ad spend. It's really revenue over ad spend is another way to think about it. Whereas what we're after, you called it POAS. Some people would call it profit over ad spend. I think it's just to say that in all cases, when we look at value realization off of our ad spend, we want to look at that marginal value. Now, you could do that on a first order basis. You could do that on a 6-month value basis. I would encourage you, though, just to report back the efficiency of your media on a marginal basis with every channel included.
Rising CAC, tariffs, inflation. Being profitable in e-commerce is hard. That's why managing your finances shouldn't be. Our partner Mercury helps you combine banking, credit, and working capital into one seamless, easy to manage financial system. You get banking with no hidden fees. So important. You get 1.5% cash back on all credit purchases, and you get predictable payback on all of your working capital loans. In addition, you're going to get a beautiful, easy to manage cash in, cash out dashboard to track all of your financial health in one location. And if you sign up now, you're going to be eligible for 2 different rewards. $250 when you deposit $5,000 into your bank in the first 90 days, and another $250 when you spend $5,000 on your credit card in the first 90 days. That's $500 in rewards within 90 days of joining Mercury. Join over 200,000 business owners who trust Mercury to manage their finances. And of course, tell them Taylor sent you.
Okay, so now we've established that we're going to use incrementality to understand the causal impact of our ad spend across all distributions. There's lots of great partners to do this. We work with House, we work with Measured, we work with WorkMagics, we work with all sorts of people to help run these experiments. There's lots of them out there. You can use conversion lift studies. You can use Geo2X from Google. There's so many different ways that you can run these experiments to get to the causal effect of your advertising in every channel. So once you get a causal effect, usually what that's going to give you is a relative reported weight. So it's going to say Meta reported a 2.0. The actual incremental impact measured was a 1.2. Okay, then we have a factor. That's a 60% factor that we can apply, to the reported result. And now I'm going to take that meta result and I'm always going to factor it by 60%. So if they say they generated $1,000, we're going to report 600, and we're going to take the marginal value of that $600 and we're going to use that over ad spend, right? So now the question of return then, what I love about this system, incremental marginal return, is that there's always this question of what's a good ROAS, right? Like everyone asks this all the time. This system normalizes the answer. 0 equals break even, right? For every brand, if you use this system, we can all normalize the return profile. 0 equals break even. If I have my marginal dollars are 0, okay? So if at the end of this, I made $0 of margin over my ad spend, that means that I broke even, right? I made no dollars in return, which is great. That's fine. That means there was actually a net neutral result for my ad spend, minus all variable expenses, minus my cost of goods, minus all of those things. I broke even against the ad spend. That's a $0 return, okay? And that can be true for every brand because your individual margin is considered in that process. Right. So 0 is a normalized break even. Now what I love about this is we can begin to think like investors. One of the things that I think we can do with our ad spend returns is we can start to think of it like a return on invested capital, where if I tell you, what do you expect? If I told you you were going to invest in an index fund, what would you expect the return to be on an annual basis?
5-10%.
That's right. Somewhere 8% is about the average, but if I told you it was somewhere between 5 to 10%, you would understand, okay, I'm going to invest $10 and I'm going to get 80 cents in return, right? Like, so I can begin to understand what it means to make a return on my investment. Well, incremental marginal return allows you to do that with your ad spend. So now if my marginal return, let's say, is $100 on 1,000 invested, right? Then what I've got is a 10% IMR, right? 10% IMR, right? So I've got a 10% annual return, or again, whatever marginal value, if you're using first order return on investment. You could do this on a year basis. You could do it on whatever time horizon you want. And it also allows you to now put all channels up against each other. So now you could do this at a Meta level, you could do this at a Google level, because again, you have an incremental read, you have the marginal value, you have the ad spend. So now all of your channels are gonna look like your stock portfolio. So Meta is gonna report plus 8.2%, Google might be minus 3.7%, and they're weighted evenly against each other. And then additionally, you can have a total portfolio view. This is what we're going to get used to. And inside of our platform, Statless, what we're building is sort of like a dashboard that looks like a trade desk, right? Where at the top, you've got your portfolio. And this is going to be your total marginal return in whatever time period over your total investment. Okay, now what's really important is that this doesn't care about new versus return, right? Because incrementality can allow for, you can have an incremental acquisition of an existing customer. So that's important. We have to begin to understand this, and this is my total percent return, right? Now, what I can then see is like a stock portfolio. So if that's my total portfolio at the top of your Robinhood screen, for those of you that are invest or like to do a little trading, I know you do, Mickey, big day trader guy. We're gonna have a percentage return, and then you're gonna see every channel like it's a stock, right? You could look at new customers like they're a stock. You could look at lapsed customers like they're a stock. The point is that you can begin to think about the allocation of capital through the lens of return. And as long as you're generating a positive return, usually there's going to be some consideration for a hurdle rate, which is going to be what is the either the cost of capital. So if I want my return, cost of capital must be less than my return, or there's like, you could think of it as like alternative investment. If you could open a store and make 20% return in a year, then there's like a comparison. But the idea is you can start to think about your ad investment like an investor, and you can set a threshold for an annual expected return or a first order expected return. And now you have a very simple way where I don't have to understand like, what is my brand ROAS versus my Meta ROAS versus my Snapchat ROAS, because incrementality normalizes those. And then you can bring them into the same measurement system where it's all based on this idea of a percentage return, marginal value over dollars invested. Doing this is going to unlock more ad spend right away because you're going to broaden the system of measurement. You're going to stop narrowing the band of this to new versus returning customers. And you're going to be able to look at every dollar as generating any positive incremental return. We want to continue to fund that. This is how you unsuffocate your business. You unlock this website only exclusive obligation. You get out of this young brand behavior of focusing all your ad dollars only on new customer acquisition. You bring back to life all these lapsed customers. You normalize the return with experiments in incrementality. And all of a sudden you're breathing freely. It's like those, you've seen those TikTok videos where you put that nasal strip on and it like opens up the magnets, it opens up your nose. That's what this is, man.
Seeing in color.
That's right. A lot of times when brands do this broadening of distribution, what they're under considering in that process is how much complexity they're introducing into making decisions. And this is what I see is that brands rush into Amazon as if it's a great new opportunity or retail as if it's a great new opportunity for expansion. But what they substantially under consider is how much harder they've made every decision that they're going to make thereafter. And so I think you have to sequence through these really carefully and with thought so that you know, okay, I can't open Amazon until I have a system for measuring it. And I can't tell you, I bet that 80+%, maybe even 90+% of the brands that I see, Amazon is a separate team on a separate P&L with a separate set of ad dollars than what's happening on the web. But these dollars on Meta are driving the demand everywhere, or YouTube. You need to think of this as the engine for growth for the whole business, not just your .com. And so they're really suffocating themselves. And alternatively, some of the best brands we work with, I think Native Deodorant deserves a lot of credit for this because what they've understood is from the time that P&G acquired that business from Moise, and we've been working with them since the day they started, is they understood that ultimately the bulk of the market was in retail. Is that if you're going to buy deodorant and we're going to grow this business into hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, what's going to happen is we're going to move from a .com business to one where the distribution happens in retail, and our media plan needs to follow that same process. Where when we started with them, the vast majority of their media was on conversion optimized meta ads for driving demand on the website, and now that's a tiny fraction of the budget. And so it begins to flow and follow the distribution in a way that makes total sense because it's connected to the business strategy. But so often, sales and distribution are disassociated from how the team measuring the ad dollars or your agency is expected to work.
Right. And these big brands have big teams. Also, I heard you say that you can make a given case for any channel at any time.
That's right. And you create counter incentives where if I'm in charge of the Amazon P&L, I don't want the meta ad dollars showing up on my P&L, right? And so you actually create this scenario where you have people fighting over different portions of the business. And so somebody has to sit across all of the distribution and think about advertising as a mechanism for driving business growth holistically, and to think about how those ad dollars are allocated against the business objective for the future of the business, not the where it came from, right? And so many brands are stuck that their media job is to drive AMER, new customer acquisition efficiency, on their website while the business is going a different way from a distribution and strategy perspective. And it is killing these brands in this $50+ million range. And I see it over and over. And you know what's hard? It's hard to build a system of daily measurement where you can see your Amazon and .com revenue together against your media dollars with a clear sense of incrementality against it. Because this incremental measurement roadmap, this is months of work, right? To set up a good geo holdout experiment in every channel for every tactic is a long road. But it's a set of disciplined decisions where you're constantly getting better and better information. I call it like building a better truth all the time. What we know today needs to be less than what we know 30 days from now. And as long as we can continue to improve on that and work towards this expectation, we can get there. But you're gonna see more from us on this idea of incremental marginal return. You can normalize this. IROAS is a great first step where at least you're getting to an incremental return on investment. From there, you can begin to break apart the margin expectations of the channels and work through it. But it's really important that brands start to take these steps. And the key is you have to assess the impact across every point of distribution. You have to assess the impact across every customer type, or you're going to continue to be a starving giant.